What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Grid Live Encore. I'm Ben Schneider alongside Brandon Crosslin, and for the second time on Encore, we welcome in Joshua Burch. Josh, how are you doing? It's been a busy week for you.
Very busy week, and I do apologize that I'm really having to force my voice out here today after so much over the weekend. I woke up this morning to find nothing but gravel lodged in, so I've done a Marquez and I've fallen off. But after that great weekend, I'll happily suffer for a couple of days and be hopefully fighting fit for Saudi Arabia.
That sounds good. Well, we will certainly get through the Formula stuff first, but you can go get some rest. I understand it's been a busy week for you, so we appreciate all you do here at Grid and for your own channel as well. But before we get into the F2 and F3 stuff, I do want to give you a chance, since you weren't on the show yesterday, just to react to the F1 race in Bahrain. Give us your thoughts on the race, who surprised you, some winners, some losers, and I understand you might have some news regarding the Red Bull failures that we saw at the end of the race yesterday as well.
I do indeed. We'll get on to that a little later on as I go through a wrap up. Yeah, sorry I wasn't on last night as well. Severe sleep deprivation, I suppose, as well, from only running on 6 hours across 3 days covering everything. I went downstairs I think it was to grab a drink, and I came back up with my shoes on. So clearly I wasn't thinking straight, so it wasn't been very good for me to have gone on live television. Right, what did I think of the race? First of all, the new regulations work absolutely brilliantly. The start was fantastic. A lot of close battles as well. Became a race of two halves. Cars were able to follow each other, and everyone was very well behaved until Ocon hit Schumacher. Further on as well, I thought the battle between Verstappen and Leclerc was fantastic. Two drivers who in the past have come together. There was some clean racing, some clean dicing as well. And it was genuinely that we were excited to wait to see about the battles, because usually with the DRS down to turn one, if a driver made the overtake, that's it. It was done and dusted. With these new cars, Leclerc and Verstappen, whenever they were behind, were able to keep up with the use of the ground effect that nullifies the negative airflow that used to hit the cars and slow them down. This time it goes underneath the floor, increases the acceleration as well. And I thought it was brilliant that we were able to pick the sides they wanted to race at and just have the same amount of acceleration as when they were stuck behind the car. It worked brilliantly. The end of the race was a bit bizarre. I was hoping for no safety cars and get it done as quickly as possible, because we had to run over to do IndyCar. We did manage to do IndyCar. Literally, we went off air for F1 after the checker flag. By the time we got on for IndyCar, the green flag was just waving and the cars were coming out turn 4. So thank you, Pierre Gasly. I do not like you for what you did. But the reason that happened, to get onto it now as well, the power units at the Red Bull, of course, AlphaTauri and Red Bull linked together, both use the same amount of engines. And what happened was, I've been told by Adam Cooper, who's a journalist at Motorsport News, I think there's a spider that's about to crawl right across my camera lens. And it's just, I can see it going through. Hello to Amber as well. It's just gone past. I'm going to have to clean that. Oh, dear. Okay, so what happened was, it was nothing to do with the power units. That's been confirmed. It's been nothing to do as well with a loss of fuel pressure. What happened was, it quickly became apparent that the power units of both men were starved of fuel, despite there being plenty of the new E10 fuel in there as well. So it was not a problem with the power unit. It's the actual fuel tank. That's more like a big bag. I've got some props here, like Ted Kravitz. This is a crisp bag from the MotoGP delayed session. So if you imagine that this is the fuel tank, I'm able to mold it exactly how I want it. So underneath the seat of all the F1 drivers, they have a perfectly molded fuel tank to their own body weight. So it can shift around and be bigger at one side than it is at the other, and shorter as well. Now, it's different on each of the cars. The one thing that is consistent is at the exit of that tank, there is the fuel capsule, which I can demonstrate here with the end of a sound guard. So it's the same standard size across all of the Red Bull AlphaTauri tanks. Now, there was a problem with that release valve, where under the heat of the new engines and the compression that they've never been gone under before, and with the porpoising effect, from what we understand is that cracked. So it was just sipping fuel. Somewhere between the overtakes, it cracked. And that's what caused the fire on Gasly's car. Fuel was leaking out into the battery part, and it burned out the control electronic system as well. And that's what caused the fire. What caused Max Verstappen was that he had two separate issues. The first issue, he had a power steering issue after pit stops, which lopsided the car because one of the wheels weren't on correctly. So it was lopsiding the car, and it was quite heavy to steer. Loss of hydraulic pressure didn't help that either. Second thing, as I said, the fuel system's cracked as well. No fuel getting into the engine, and it just died on him as well. He was running on electronic power only, not on the fuel tank. Sergio Perez, same issue, but the reason his tyres locked up and the engine died immediately, why it didn't happen to Verstappen, was because when Perez hit the brakes for turn one, he dramatically came down the gearbox from 8th gear down to 2nd gear. When he turned in as well, the fuel tank cap came off, and that just literally, it's a sensor, it kicks off the engine. When that happened as well, he was on the power to accelerate and shifting up. Because there was no power, the gearbox seized, the rear's locked, and round he went, and the engine stalled because of all the problems. So that's what happened there. So it is the same issue across the board, but it's nothing to do with the fuel. It's nothing to do with the power unit. It is that faulty sensor and that faulty power, that faulty fuel cap that they've got to solve. Secondly, winners and losers from the race. Biggest losers, definitely McLaren as well. They've been off the pace so much. Testing in Barcelona went brilliantly. We thought they were title contenders. We arrive in Bahrain, the brakes aren't working, and they were suffering with that all weekend long. And they thought they had better race pace, but they were back at the field on lap one. Winners, Haas, definitely. Big up for the American team as well. Kevin Magnussen in 5th place after 15 months not being in a Formula One car. That's absolutely fantastic. And second of all, my biggest one as well, Zhou Guanyu getting points, as did Valtteri Bottas. And who could forget Ferrari? A 1-2 for the team for the first time since Singapore in 2019 as well. And Leclerc's first win since Monza the same year. Absolutely fantastic. It's a whole new world of Formula One. I don't think we're ready for it yet because so much has changed. But anyway, that's my thoughts on what happened in Bahrain and all the news.
Thank you for that update on the Red Bull teams, and certainly hope that they can get those resolved, because I think it's going to be a good fight between them and Ferrari for the championship this year. And then we'll see. Maybe Mercedes can find a couple extra tenths as well and get right back up there where they've been throughout the entire turbo hybrid era. So I'm sure we're in for a great start to our season. And also starting their season, Formula 2 and Formula 3 kicking off their seasons in Bahrain. And this season marks a return to the classic format of one sprint race and one feature race. Richard Verschoor took the win in the sprint race, giving Trident their first win since 2016, followed by Jahan Daruvala and Liam Lawson. And in the feature race, Theo Pourchaire recovered from a retirement in the sprint race to take victory ahead of Lawson and Yuri Vips. Now, Vips said after the race that a terribly slow pit stop cost him what he called an easy victory. So, Josh, we'll bring you back in here. Is Vips right? Can you blame what happened with his team and the slow pit stop for not only costing him a win, but he also mentioned he could have been leaving Bahrain leading the championship as well?
Absolutely, he could have been as well. He had a great strategy in that race as well. He stayed out as long as possible during the feature. He was making moves left, right, and centre. And then the pit stop happened, and we were all going, this is going to be great. Where is he going to come out? And then all of a sudden, he just stays there. Again, there was a lot of problems in the feature race with the front left tyres. We've got no idea what's going on with them. We had a car end up in the fast lane, bringing out the safety car. Two at once had the same problem as well and had to retire from the race. Dennis Hauger was one of them as well. The other was Callum Williams as well. Vips was very lucky that he got out the pit lane. So F2 are investigating that as to what exactly is happening, because the wheel gun and the nuts, they're standard parts as well from Dallara and Pirelli. So they're trying to work that out, or exactly what's happened and what's changed, because we've been racing with these wheels of 18 inches for a couple of seasons now. They really should have it under control. But I don't think Vips can blame the team. It was happening across the board. What I can agree with him is that they should have pitted him earlier because he lost too much time and lost out. But still, Vips was one of my drivers of the day for Formula 2. He was doing some great running. It's a shame he's lost out in the championship. but that's 2 down. There's another 26 races to go this year. He's got plenty of time to catch up.
And we have a question from one of our regulars here, Amber, in the chat. How does one watch Formula 2 in America? It is a little complicated, but if you have a cable subscription, you can watch, or stream rather, I guess I should say, Formula 2 on ESPN3 online. And if you want to watch Formula 3 as well, you need a subscription to ESPN Plus. So it is a little complicated. It's not like you just turn on your TV and go to one of the channels, but there are streaming options for American viewers to watch these series. Now, speaking of Americans in Formula 2, Logan Sargent had a good debut weekend, finishing 6th and 7th in the sprint race and feature race, respectively. Sargent became a member of the Williams Driver Academy, but unfortunately, a lack of funding prevented him from making the jump from F3 to F2 a year earlier. Fortunately, he did have a pathway open up for him to get that opportunity this year. Now, Enzo Fittipaldi was born in Miami. He does hold dual citizenship, but he races under the Brazilian flag. Sargent is the only American running in Formula 2 this season. So, Brandon, I'd like to get your opinion on this one as well. We've been talking a lot about Colton Herta and obviously the rumors swirling him and the Andretti Global team. Of course, now this new deal with McLaren as well. But if we look past Herta, Josh, we'll go to you first on this one. If you had to pick a second best hope for an American Formula 1 driver right now, is the answer to that question Logan Sargent?
Yes, I believe it is. Sargent has been coming up the ranks for a couple of years now as well. He's a proven winner. He's some fantastic races as well, some fantastic racecraft. Williams signed him in early as well into their development package, mainly because they've got an eye on him replacing either Latifi or Albon as well, because they know they can't keep both of them for very long. Albon seems to be just a temporary fix to a problem because they hadn't got George Russell there. Latifi, of course, is bringing in the cash, but cash may be king, but it doesn't last forever, not in this game of Formula 1. So Williams are looking at replacing him as well. Sargent's not ready just yet, needs another year or two, but he is up there ready to go. If he's not picked up by Williams, I think we could see when Andretti come in as well, that they'll have Herta alongside Sargent. It just makes sense. You've got an experienced junior European racer who's an American as well, and you've got the fast single-seater racer in Colton Herta, who's racing in IndyCar. Bringing the two together, it helps. It gives the experience that Herta brings with him to the team to Sargent, and for Herta, it gives him Sargent's knowledge of the paddock of Formula 1 as well. So I think if I was Andretti, I'd be keeping an eye on them.
Yeah, I think it gives Logan Sargent, Joshua, just enough. There's just the amount of time that he needs this season and next before Andretti Global starts in Formula 1. And like you said, that'd be a perfect match made in heaven for Logan Sargent and Colton Herta to be on the same Formula 1 squad. And I can't wait for the day that we hear the Star Spangled Banner on the Formula 1 podium.
Yeah, I got to think, the way Haas looked in Bahrain, who knows? Maybe one of them pulls an Esteban Ocon this year. We might get it with the constructor side of things. But I'll tell you, Andretti Global, I think Michael's been on record saying he would like to have an All-American lineup if that's a possibility. Obviously, we know Colton Herta is pretty much a shoo-in for one of those seats. They do need to fill the second seat here. And we have a comment on that note from our own Joe Samniego. Good to see you, Joe. With the United States becoming a bigger market for Formula 1, could we see more than one American on the grid? Josh, we'll go to you first here.
I think we could see 3. In all honesty, I think I said Logan Sargent, Colton Herta, and I think they'll bring in a third as well. And I don't think it'll be a third that we're all thinking of. I think they'll go out of the books, out of the mark. They may go for a NASCAR Xfinity Series driver as well. Someone not quite the top of their class in that series. Pick them up from another junior category and shove them in. They might put them in F3, maybe to F2, but just see what we could run there as well. Maybe even the trucks as well. I'm not sure what the age range is at ARCA as well, but I think that they really want them to have Liberty Media really want American drivers in, and they don't want another Scott's Vegas. I think that'll be a bit of a mistake, really, because I would really, really, really like to see the LA race. And Los Angeles, come on, make it happen. Just make it. Los Angeles. Let's go. New York. There's so many. Just let's go.
I have a different American driver for your consideration, possibly from IndyCar, Kyle Kirkwood. I think that's the other American that's under consideration.
That's a good call, actually. And I think Kirkwood as well was racing well yesterday before what happened with Christian Lundgaard, who was on everybody's hit list yesterday, wasn't it? Poor. I mean, I was commentating on that race. Just get your opinions on that quickly as well. It wasn't just me who noticed and was critical of what Christian Lundgaard, because he was Devlin DeFrancesco. Sorry, mind going. Devlin DeFrancesco. He was involved in every single caution. It wasn't just me who noticed that, was it? You lot over there did notice it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's been a struggle to start for Andretti, generally speaking. I think if you look past Colton Herta, with Rossi and Grosjean's issues as well, but De Francesco certainly not making any friends out there as he begins his young IndyCar career.
Yeah, it seems like Andretti, besides Colton Herta, they're taking a lot of experiments this year and seeing if they work. Besides Alexander Rossi.
Fab. I didn't know if it was just me who was noticing that yesterday during the commentary, because I had no external feed. It was just me. So back to you.
Yeah, I think if I recall correctly, I think the NBC commentators maybe even brought it up at some point. But it is early. We'll see if DeFrancesco can get things turned around. But I completely agree with both of you guys. There's certainly talent. I mean, Rossi himself, I think, deserved more of an opportunity in F1 than he got before he lost his seat to a paid driver in Rio Harrienzo at Manor. So the talent is there. It's just a matter of putting all the pieces in the right place. If you get a team like Andretti Global that's committed to doing that, assuming everything goes through, I think you're certainly going to see at least two. And Josh, like you said, there's certainly talent for even more. The sport is booming over here. We've got 2 races on the calendar, potentially maybe a third coming as soon as a couple of years from now. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens going forward.
While we're still on this note, I really want to commend you, Ben, for sharing that thread about Drive to Survive today. That's a really great read. Go to Ben Schneider's Twitter account and look at that whole thread of the really in-depth look of how Drive to Survive really has done a number for the American audience for F1.
Yeah, if you forgive me, I'm trying to pull it up now so that I credit the author of the thread here, Nathan Baugh. If you BAUGH at Nathan Baugh 27. If you go to his Twitter, he has a feed that says Formula One is a $13 billion global behemoth, but until 2019, it failed to crack the U.S. market. Then it launched Drive to Survive, the most effective content campaign in history. Here's a breakdown, and it's a thread of about 10 or so tweets that goes into the numbers and analytics and everything that has gone into making that series and thus the sport so popular here in the States. And I got to tell you, I feel like every other week I'm having someone come up to me that I've known for years that wasn't a fan of a sport 5 years ago before Liberty Media took over, that now tell me they're hooked. And almost always, universally, it starts with the Netflix show and Drive to Survive.
It is for better or for worse, but it is doing something on the numbers.
Absolutely.
Well, speaking from a European's point of view over here as well, and with the American Grand Prix we had in 2021, I felt the energy, and I was standing here in the commentary box. The amount. I love IndyCar races for that reason. The fans get so passionate and so involved in it as well. Every time I went to America in F1, it was just like they're there, but they're the diehard fans that were there. This time we had people who were just coming to see because they'd seen it on Drive to Survive. They'd heard about it from their friends. They're going to see it, and then they walk away going, "That was amazing." This happens weekly? This is amazing. Tell me more. The American fans always struggled to get in touch with the Formula One because we always held it in the wrong places. Now we're taking it to the city. We're taking it to the people. We're taking it to Cota in the heart of Texas as well. And they are getting to understand it. And I'm loving it because there is nothing more great than American fans. We see Indy packed every year for the 500. And it was just so heartwarming to see what America packed at Cota. And for me personally, I left the comment box that night thinking, oh my God, that was a fantastic race. And then I have people coming up to me a few days later saying, oh, wasn't that a boring race? Well, I mean, we had all the hype of Hamilton trying to overtake Verstappen, and it never came. And I said, yeah, but the fans made that hype. You could hear them cheering in the grandstand. You could hear them shouting down as well. It just built up the atmosphere massively. And then they said to me, oh yeah, but fans do that every race. And they said, no, they don't do that every race. There's some fans that you literally just sit there in the grandstand and only cheer if there's a crash. You never get fans who are engaged with the racing like that, literally shouting them on from corner to corner. It's fantastic. I think the reason F1 never worked before was the fact that A, we've now got American owners, and B, Bernie could never get it to work because he always thought like a British businessman who was a used car dealer. He never thought about social media. He never thought about the power of Netflix or Amazon and things like that. Liberty have come from their experience in the States, and they've put it all into practice. They've cracked the American market, and now we've really got a world championship where everybody loves it. Admittedly, we're still lacking on the American driver front, but that'll happen. We're still lacking in a lot of fronts. We haven't got a female driver in. We don't have any female race officials in race control yet. It's coming. It's a short process. It is changing, and it's exciting to see the change happening as well. Because if you look at Formula One from even 5 years ago, right at the start of Liberty's maintain, it's all, oh well, Ferrari this, they veto all this as well. We don't post silly things on social media. And then this morning you wake up to they've posted Homer Simpson in bed with Ferrari hats and love hearts, and they're adoring their fans. That's the change Liberty's had. They've melted the ice around the F1 paddock, and now everybody's coming in and everybody's taking in the love, and I can't wait to see what's next. A little bit of a rant there, but I'm excited. It's like we've got fans everywhere. Everybody knows Formula One now.
Yeah, it's great. And I can tell you, as an American fan since around 2015 or so, when Liberty took over, you could tell, like just from the YouTube channel to the Twitter feed, that there was a noticeable change in how F1 was approaching social media. And I think that's only helped too. That's helped find the younger market and bring them in to the sport as well. And on the subject of American drivers, I'm reminded it may sound a little far-fetched that you're looking at NASCAR for a potential American F1 driver, but the way the super license points worked out, I remember somebody brought this up, I think maybe even on Reddit it was, in 2019. If Martin Truex Jr. had won that championship, he would have had consecutive finishes of first, second, and first in the Cup point standings. That alone, right then and there, would have qualified him for a super license on the spot. Now, Martin Truex Jr. in particular, I don't know that at this stage in his career he would be interested in a Formula One drive, but it does show that the way the super license points work out now, it may not look like NASCAR drivers get that much credit, but somebody goes on a run, it would certainly be possible, and who knows what the future might hold.
And I was, this is the first year I've covered NASCAR in the commentary box as well when I was doing it with the USRN. And I've watched NASCAR for years as well, but originally I thought, well, NASCAR's just not stock car racing, is it? It's not proper racing. You look at it now, and I'm starting commentary on it, completely changed my opinion on it. It's just as complicated as Formula One in terms of the technology, in terms of the racing, though. It's much purer. I think that's what Formula One has tried to capture now, isn't it, as well? And you've seen it in Formula 2 and Formula 3 as well, to make it topical to the Encore show. They've simplified the cars a lot more as well. They've simplified the regulations so casual viewers can pick up the sport more easier. And then they've sort of opened up how to explain it more technically, but in a really simple way. It's one thing I love about Martin Brundle. He's been there, done that. But he doesn't patronize you in the way he says and explains things as well. He can explain things simply, but still in a technical manner. And that's what Formula One has had to learn to do in order to get the fans. And I think it's worked really well. I mean, if you remember as well, in 2014, when Formula E started, they were one of the biggest innovators in social media and in motorsport as well, because they held their races free to air on YouTube. They had the biggest social media following as well. They had the most accessibility to the drivers, to the paddocks. You could even walk in the pit lane if you were just a normal ticket holder in between sessions as well. And even during the sessions, they were letting people run down the pit lane. It was so open to everyone. And now it's the polar opposite. Formula One is up there doing that for the fans, whereas Formula E sort of shut itself off and is in the middle of they're in a problem at the moment. And it's all because different owners, different social media, different ways of promoting the sport has changed it all. And I think one thing that I really do like is that Formula One is taking its junior series with it, and they're not letting it drop. We know in the States it's hard to follow the junior series. We understand there's something big coming for the W series in America, so that you lot can finally watch it live on television, which is great news. And they're thinking about it. They're bringing it up because in the back of their minds, they know as well as we do that if they can get the casual fans hooked on the names of the people in the junior formulas, when they reach the top, the ticket sales will go through the roof because they all know who's racing. They all know the merchandise sales as well, the revenue as well. Are you going to go to a racetrack where Christian Lundgaard is battling with Djokovic as well in the Formula 2 battle when you don't know who they are? Or you're going to go when Lewis Hamilton's star lining it, and then you've advertised the junior formulas as well, showing who's great racing, and they go, oh yeah, let's go see Lewis, let's go see the Formula 2 race, let's go see the Formula 3 race. It's going to be a great weekend. That's what we need. That's what's happening. And that's what other series need to learn off Formula One. They know how to advertise, and they certainly know what to do. That's a massive tangent we've gone on, but it's a brilliant tangent to talk about.
No, it's great. I've enjoyed having a bit more conversational pace on this show, and it is certainly a great time to be a Formula One fan, generally speaking, but in particular over here in America. I love what Liberty have done. I think, even though I'm not a huge fan of a sprint race format, I have to admit, I'm not looking forward to that this year. But in terms of engagement and bringing in a new audience, you have to give credit where it's due. It's been an absolutely massive success, and hopefully that success will carry over to F2, F3, and W Series as well, as long as they remain support series on F1. So without further ado, it's hard to believe we're already coming up on almost a half hour here. Let's get into Formula 3 and recap that weekend here. It was a pair of Frenchmen sweeping the two F3 races this weekend. Isaac Hadjar of High Tech and Victor Martins of ART. Now, interestingly enough, Oliver Behrman actually crossed the finish line first in race 1, but was relegated back to P2 after receiving a 5-second penalty for track limits. So we'll bring Josh back in here to talk about this, because this is actually something that came up on the F1 broadcast quite a bit as well, trying to make it very simple. If your tires are outside the white lines, you're going to get busted for a track limits penalty. Josh, I want your opinion. Are you satisfied with the way track limits were enforced this weekend in Bahrain, not just in Formula 3, but all throughout the weekend?
Massively so, yeah, because everybody's been saying for the past couple of seasons that it was a joke, the track limits, that they were only in certain parts as well, where a car would naturally run wide as well if the drivers weren't controlling the car. Like, say you get a better acceleration if the car runs wide. That's a deliberate act. Everybody knew about it. And there's a part of the corner at Silverstone as well, exit turn 1 of Abbey. You can just straight line it through Farm, which is a little tiny kink, but all 4 wheels do go over the white line. Now, that wasn't a track limit exposure, but now it is, which is great, because everybody knows the curbs are not part of the racetrack. There's a reason there's those white lines around the curbs as well. They're not part of the track. They're there so that the drivers can hit the apex without touching the grass and dirting their tires. That's all they're there for. So finally, the race control have changed that. And it's not just for this weekend. It is a permanent change across the board. The fact that if you go over the white line with all 4 wheels, you have your lap time deleted at any part of the track. It's brilliant, because I didn't have to say in qualifying where the track limits were at 9, 12, 14, and 1. It's a simple change, and it keeps the fans engaged. And they've brought that in because of what happened in Abu Dhabi as well, when Hamilton straight lined the chicane as well, and all that time was lost to all that time was gained against Verstappen, and Verstappen was complaining over the radio. Basically, they've looked at the Abu Dhabi race and they've changed nearly every rule they can to ensure that nothing like that happens again. So I'm very happy. And so are the drivers, actually, that the white lines are the limits, because now there's no bartering on the radio. And also there's a different rule in place about this. If you overtake over the white lines, the FIA will not tell you to give the position back. It's up to the teams at their own discretion to inform the driver, you've gone over the line, please give that place back. But if you don't do it, the stewards will give you a penalty for it. So it's a lot more left down to interpretation. But either way, if you don't give the place back, you've been given a penalty. It's sort of like when you've got a gun to your head and you're asked to call somebody you don't call your mum who's going to pick up immediately. You call an old cancelled number you've still got in your phone as well. And it's that sort of psychology, because you know it's not going to pick up. It's quite comical the way that they're handling it now, but I'm happy that the track limits have been sorted. I'm happy that the stewards are finally taking interest in things. And as a little side note, how happy were we when the safety car came in not only the F2 race, but in the F1 race as well. And the lapped cars now are automated by the computer as to who's a lap down. And now the FIA do not have to manually go looking through. A computer does it for them, and the computer tells them when to go past the safety car and dictates when the safety car comes in. That was brilliant.
And a couple other drivers we want to give a shout out to. Everybody, of course, knows Charles Leclerc. His younger brother Arthur races in Formula 3, and he leaves Bahrain second in points after finishes of 5th and 2nd this weekend. And driver that I want to shed some spotlight on, Juan Manuel Correa, his best Formula 3 finish since that horrifying F2 accident in Spa, of course, that claimed the life of his fellow F2 racer, Antoine Hubert. He finished the second race in P4. So, Josh, just our final question for you here, and then we'll let you go. I guess we'll give you one shining moment as well. But I know you've been a very busy man this weekend, so I don't want to keep you on for the whole show here. But just talk about Correa for a second. How remarkable has his recovery been the last couple of years here?
Oh, absolutely remarkable as well. I thought he'd never race again, and to see him fight back and get in the car is absolutely fantastic. And for him to, as a first-time commentating on him as well this weekend for Formula 3, he was such a delight to watch. He was making overtakes left, right, and center. He's back into full fitness, which is great to see. And I know what happens is still with him as well. He still says about it as well. He very much is racing for Anton, and with him in the back of his mind. It wasn't his fault what happened as well. It was a freak accident that day. And I'm sure we all remember where we were. I was sitting in the front room with my dad watching it as well. I was talking to him. And then I suddenly, at the corner of my eye, saw a lazy spin, and it just silence as well as everything went on. And then manually refreshing the media center information, everything we could to see everything. And we got the delight that Juan Manuel Correa was stable, but in a critical condition, that he was alive. And then 2 minutes later, we got the news that Anton had passed away. So that was heartbreaking. But it's fantastic and very emotional. And the day he wins a Formula 3 race, which is going to be this season for absolute sure after this weekend, I think there won't be a dry eye in the house. That's for sure. And
so on that note, Josh, since you weren't on the show yesterday, I guess I'll give you everything that happened this weekend, not just the series we cover here on Encore. What is your one shining moment from the weekend in racing?
My one shining moment goes to Esteban Ocon, believe it or not, because as we all know, he was involved with the accident with Mick Schumacher at the start of the race, and that put Schumacher out of the points contention. He finished 11th in that race as well. Mick got out of the car and looked absolutely dejected and deflated because he knew he hadn't got any points again, and he felt like he missed a chance. And then all of a sudden, you see Mick looking really upset and really like, oh, when am I ever going to get points? Is this ever going to happen? And Esteban Ocon comes running up alongside the cars, gives him a big old hug, and just sort of whispers something in his ear as well through the helmets, and was just like giving him a big up as well. And I guess he apologized, but it was really nice to see that they're rivals on the track and friends off the track. And I think that's something that we don't see much of these days. Yeah, the elder drivers and Max Verstappen as well, they fight and they bicker and all that lot. But the younger generation who've come up racing together, they really are a band of brothers, and it is fantastic to see that they big each other up like that. So that's my one shining moment, the fact that the drivers do care for each other, and Esteban Ocon as well, a top bloke for going to apologise. Could you see Max doing that against Lewis after what happened in Saudi? No, I don't think so either.
I completely agree. Well, Josh, thank you so much for coming on tonight. Of course, you're welcome anytime here on this show.
Absolute
and
pleasure.
Best of luck. Go get some rest and get geared up for Saudi Arabia next weekend.
I'm going to go get a milkshake. They help. I'm not even joking. It's 11:40, something like that, and I'm still going to have a milkshake.
Sounds like a good idea.
Thank you. And hopefully my voice will return. I mean, I've got 4 days, so it should be back before Saudi.
Sounds good. Well, we will see you then. And like I said, best of luck with everything you're going to cover next weekend.
Thank you. Have a great show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Josh.
All right, well, Brandon, let's get into the stock car stuff here. I think we have to start with ARCA East at Pensacola, and certainly no surprise, Sammy Smith, the race winner again. 2 wins in 2 races. Now, we talked a little bit when we were previewing the season. Last year, the number 18 Toyota came very close to sweeping the entire season. Sammy Smith lost out to Max Gutierrez at the last second of the season opener in Smyrna last year. Does Sammy Smith have a legitimate chance of sweeping the standalone East races? There's only 2 more this season, and perhaps even the East season outright when we get into the combo races later in the year.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely a possibility, and I can only say that with confidence because he doesn't have much competition in ARCA East, and besides Taylor Gray. But if he can hold off Taylor Gray and the rest of the field in the East, they've got Dover coming up on April 29th, and then they come near my neck of the woods, Nashville Fairgrounds, on May 7th, and then Iowa, Milwaukee Mile, and Bristol after that. I think he's got it pretty much in the bag, as long as there's no mechanical issues, and if he just qualifies well, he'll hold his marks, and he might get the sweep you're talking about.
Yeah, certainly Kyle Busch Motorsports taking ownership of that car. They're picking up right where Joe Gibbs left off with that season last year, and completely agree. I've got to tell you, they're heading to Dover April 29th. That's right in my neck of the woods here in Delaware, so I might have to head down to that race, especially
if you can pay the ticket price.
Yeah, I got to tell you, there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding the track right now after they were just purchased, but man, I don't know, $29, I think it is, something like that for an East race with, what are we going to get, 14, 15 cars maybe? It's not a combo race. It's I don't know. It seems like
I'm not feeling the love either with us. I'm not feeling the love either with SMI buying out Nashville Super Speedway.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, both of our home tracks there, part of a Dover Motorsports brand. So we'll see what happens here. There's been some talk on social media. It all seems to be doom and gloom. People saying that Dover doesn't have much of a future, but we'll see. It is a stronger market here than. It's certainly not the weakest one. There are a lot of race fans in Delaware that come out to Dover every year, so we'll see. But I don't think there's too much hype surrounding the ARCA East race. Admittedly, I think it's certainly going to be for the Cup and Xfinity weekend on that side of things here.
Yeah, but I'd say wait for Dover's weekend though with NASCAR. I think it's really going to impress with this Gen 7 car on the Cup Series side, and I think people are going to be pleasantly impressed with the way this car is going to run Dover. I just am guessing at this point.
Yeah, we have a question here from Amber, and it's actually one I don't really know the answer to. Has anyone ever swept a season? I'm thinking, McLaren came very close in 1988 in Formula One between their 2 drivers. Mercedes, I think, got 19 of the 21 races in 2016, and Sammy Smith and Ty Gibbs, like we mentioned last year, 7 out of 8 in the 18 car. For Joe Gibbs in ARCA East. And I think Sam Mayer actually won 5 out of 6 East races in the pandemic-interrupted 2020 season. That's as close as I can think of, and most of those examples are between teammates for one team or one car anyway, so that would be an interesting question. I don't know if we got some of our grid colleagues of the chat that can maybe do some stat cracking and figure it out. I'm sure it's happened in some series somewhere. There's all sorts of motorsport series and disciplines all around the world. But I am struggling to think off the top of my head of any time that might have happened.
Yeah, maybe some karting championship somewhere. I'm sure in the record books there's been that one kid that won it all.
Yeah, I think 2004, Michael Schumacher retired from Monaco, but I think that was the year he won like 12 of the first 13 F1 races. So, we certainly have seen a lot of dominant seasons where they won almost every race, but, trying to think of anybody sweeping a season. Sammy Smith's still alive. You got to get 2 before you can get all 7. So, we'll see what comes of that. It's certainly a tall order, but if anybody can do it, that car has certainly been dominant here these last couple of years. Now, to go down the order a little bit here, let's pull up the rest of the results. Leland Honeyman was in second. He was the pole sitter. Smith, of course, ended up getting the win. Taylor Gray, coming off of the win last weekend in the combo race with Big ARCA and ARCA West in Phoenix, he finished third, followed by Daniel Escoto and Willie Mullins. Great to see him get a top 5. I believe that's his best career finish on a short track. Of course, he finished second at Daytona in 2018, but a great run for him nonetheless. I also want to give a shout out. Adam Lemeries actually on Twitter alerted us. Ashton Higgins made his debut, and he finished 7th. He's from North Carolina, so right down in Adams' neck of the woods there. Great run for him. And here's a last name that NASCAR fans might recognize. How about Finch? Jake Finch, the son of James, the former, and I guess now, again, current owner of Phoenix Racing. Jake Finch finished 8th in the East race this weekend, and probably could have finished even higher. He did have a flat tire in the closing laps that kept him from an even stronger result. But Brandon, how excited are you to see the Phoenix Racing name back in the world of stock car racing?
It's pretty exciting. I've had the privilege of seeing Phoenix Racing's 51 entry super late model entry several times behind pit lane at Nashville and Pensacola, and they're just a very organized group of guys with their team, and it's going to be exciting to see them come back into the NASCAR fold. And they've done a lot of sponsorship help as well, as far as that company Phoenix, for not only Chase Elliott's Snowball Derby run in 2020, but also the ever famous resurgence of Kurt Busch with his Me car and all of that fiasco. But Phoenix Racing really gave him his shot when he was down and out, and it'll be nice to see them come back into the ARCA side of things.
Yeah, certainly for fans of the independents and everything. I know Brock Beard over at LastCard.info has done a part of his Field Filler series on Phoenix Racing, and it's certainly great to see that name back in the sport. And of course, we all remember Brad Keselowski's maiden Cup Series win at Talladega, that thrilling finish that took the Mikusuki car to victory lane. So it's great to see the Finch family back, and we're certainly hoping for the best for Jake as he begins his young career and continues that family's legacy on here. All right, so again, not a subject that I'm terribly excited to talk about here, but I do think it deserves a mention before we get into our race recap. I want to take a moment to discuss something that somehow managed to unite social media and bring all of NASCAR Twitter together, which is very difficult to do. So I guess we can give them credit for that, at least if there's a silver lining. But the Fox Sports coverage was a major talking point on social media. It has been these last few seasons, but particularly on Saturday with the truck and Xfinity races, many fans were upset, and some of them even downright angry. I'll give Brock another shout out again. That was a big focus of his post-race live stream last night that he did, beyond the uninspired play-by-play from the booth. And in fairness, not necessarily the booth's fault, because they do get a lot of direction from the production behind the scenes, but the camera work was bizarre at times. We had countless cuts towards children in the grandstands and in the infield, and left viewers probably with the impression that there wasn't much going on and not much of a story to talk about. So, Brandon, just before we get into things here, what was your take on what we saw from Fox Sports and the truck and Xfinity broadcasts, and how concerning is this pattern that we're seeing from them, particularly what we saw on Saturday?
Well, Ben, I've kind of grown careful critiquing broadcasts over this course of being able to actually work with a TV broadcast with minor league baseball, and knowing kind of, and also back in college as well, but feeling that pressure of actually being a part of a TV broadcast crew, and the pressure that's on the technical director and the production crew. It's just so immense, and I can't be too hard on them, because I understand that pressure and to perform. But yeah, but you're on a national stage though, so there's something to be said about Fox's broadcast quality. And I do recall Vince Welch in the truck race at the end saying that Chandler Smith won when Corey Haim was crossing the finish line. That might have been the biggest oopsie, but no fault to Vince Welch. He probably had a bunch of things being yelled in his ear at that time. But really, the same trends, like we've said before, have been continuing with Fox Sports. We've seen just too close zoomed in to the action when we need to be seeing more, and not catching things as they happen in a timely manner. There's give and take room for little things, but when it comes to major problems, they need to keep being addressed until somebody in the proper space sees that people are noticing. And also, I think I saw somewhere on Twitter that back in the day, we used to focus the TV broadcast or more masculine based, which is, not right, but they used to focus on the attractive females, in the audience at motorsports events. And now with that same kind of motif, why are we focusing on the kids? It's kind of weird. And, it's cute sometimes, but with it being a common thing, they're doing it more and more and more. I don't know who insisted this, but it's kind of creepy at a certain point.
And it was the same kids too. I mean, they even made a graphic for the two young girls, so they were nicknamed Shake and Bake, and said something like almost as old as Ty Gibbs or something like that. So I mean, it just was very bizarre.
You think it's their niece or nephews at that point? Like,
yeah.
How much do they pay you?
Yeah. As if there isn't a race going on that we could be talking about. And one of the things Brock mentioned in his live stream last night is, if you go back to the 1998 Daytona 500, for example, there were cuts to the grandstands, but there were cuts to Earnhardt fans in the grandstands who were on the edge of their seat wondering, is the 20th time a charm? Is Dale Earnhardt finally going to win the Daytona 500? So there was a purpose for that.
Right.
And there was a meaning behind it. Whereas what we saw on Saturday was, a random cut to a kid here and somebody on a mechanical bull in the infield there, and then a group of ladies line dancing. I mean, it was just random cuts that had nothing to do with the racing, made absolutely no sense when there's a race going on that needs to be broadcast.
Yeah, the bottom line for a technical director, there's a time and place for those kinds of shots. But when they become it's like birthday cake. You don't want it every day of the week. Otherwise you get sick of it. It's just little here and there, little flares for your broadcast. But overall, you don't want to flood it with things like that unless they have a point to the storyline.
Yeah. And just to jump back to the point that you made a little bit earlier, I want to be the first to acknowledge that, even this production that you and I are doing right now, I've already made some mistakes trying to get to certain graphics and everything. It's not an easy thing to broadcast anything live, let alone live sports that move as quickly as 200 miles an hour. So I get that. At the same time, Fox Sports has been doing this for 22 years now.
It's a higher standard
that they're on. You would think that with that level of experience and people in the industry that have been doing this for this long, at some point, you need to hold them to a little bit higher standard than you might hold a broadcast. Not to say that you and I shouldn't try our best to do our best, but there's a difference between a random broadcast online or a company with less experience still trying to build themselves up versus one of the two major television networks that are paying to broadcast the sport that have been doing this for over 2 decades now. So it is pretty disappointing when you think about it.
Yeah, you'd hope that somebody would take a look at the staff running the board for Fox and getting complaints. What do you do when you get complaints? You snuff out the problem and figure it out. Hopefully somebody's going to be held accountable if this kind of thing continues. The only silver, like I said before, I think when we talked about Fox, the only silver lining is after Sonoma, we get NBC back.
Yeah. And in fairness, NBC is certainly not perfect either, but I think that, in particular, and this is the other thing that I think people sometimes lose sight of, because there were some cries for NBC to take over the entire schedule come 2025. And I think that you got to be careful what you wish for, because if you want to use an NBC example, you can see the IndyCar coverage. And I still think, I love Lee Diffie. He's a great play-by-play man. And I think the NBC coverage is generally speaking pretty good on the IndyCar side of things. But I don't know that it's as strong as it was in the era in which ABC broadcast the Indy 500 and a handful of other races with ESPN as well. And the reason for that is because you had competition. And when you have competition, you have somebody you're directly competing against, even if your on-air personalities know each other from previous connections and are friendly with each other. At the end of the day, you do want to hold yourself to the standard of your competition. And I think what you see with Truck Series and NASCAR is a perfect example, because NBC takes over the second half of Cup and Xfinity, but FS1 continues to broadcast the entire truck season. And I think particularly when you get into the playoffs, a lot of times you see a dip in quality because Fox has become a little bit more relaxed.
And I tell you, it's kind of hard. I mean, I hate to be cruel to a broadcast network, but I mean, it's kind of hard for me to watch the truck races sometimes, just because I know FS1 has it all year, and they have no motivation to improve, because who's stopping them? They're your only way, I mean, unless you want to listen through MRN or PRN during whatever weekend.
And that's another point. People sometimes say just mute the TV, sync it with the radio.
There you go.
But when you're cutting the kids in the grandstands, or when you're too zoomed in for the picture to do you any justice, what good does that do?
At least Bagley is telling you everything that's happening. He's not talking about the children.
That's true. That is true. But it's not an easy fix. When you have production issues on that level, not just beyond what's coming through your headset. I do want to go back to something that came in the chat here from Amber. The Me car, go look up Kurt Busch's Talladega car from 2012, his Phoenix Racing number 51 car, reference to Talladega Nights. And certainly he had some great paint schemes that year, actually, as well. So I think actually when he came back with Furniture Row in 2013, he ran a Wonder Bread car. Is that right?
I don't recall that one as well, but I'm pretty sure that's right. Then,
I think
if you recall
that 1 year as well, yeah. All right, well, let's get into the race recaps here, and of course, we were just talking about ARCA. We had an ARCA alum here, last year's runner-up in the championship. Corey Heim picked up the win in only his 5th career Truck Series start. Now, Heim was in a battle for the win with his Kyle Busch Motorsports teammate Chandler Smith, but he was able to pick up some assistance from his other KBM teammate, John Hunter Nemechek. We'll talk about John Hunter in a second here. Let's start with the guy who won the race, Corey Heim. Heim's only running 15 races this year, Brandon, but does his early win validate his ARCA success and prove that maybe he deserves a full-time ride in one of NASCAR's top series sooner rather than later?
I may have to use one of the Larry Mack pump the brakes. This is not the track to make those sort of assumptions, unfortunately. And the way Atlanta has been Frankensteined into a mini super speedway, I mean, it doesn't take the celebration away from Corey Heim. It's a great win, but no, I don't think this gives him a full ride in the trucks immediately. Now he's got 14 races left. We'll see what the young man can do, and but I think he's going to have a good season. But yeah, that 51 truck is solid. It's easy to, I think it's from outside the cockpit. I think it's easy to do well when you have the talent. It's easy to do well in the KBM equipment, and I think Corey Heim will have a good season, and he might luck out for a full-time ride next year.
Yeah, he certainly has the talent, and I think it is a matter of time before he gets that ride. But I do agree with you. Maybe not the best single race to judge somebody on, especially with this new configuration, and we'll get to that later on in the show as well. But let's talk about John Hunter Nemechek. Won stage 2, and looked like, I mean, he's you want to talk about somebody who's had bad luck this year. Nemechek fell back 2 laps down again, but found himself in and among the lead pack in the closing laps, and made a very interesting choice. He chose to push his teammate that isn't running full-time, isn't running for a championship, in Corey Heim to the win instead of Chandler Smith. And Smith wasn't too happy with his teammate and said they were definitely going to need to talk things over in their Monday morning meeting here. So if you're in the position that John Hunter Nemechek was in, you're multiple laps down, you're not going to win the race. Should he have just dropped to the back of the pack to avoid interfering with the leaders and affecting the outcome of the race, or does he have the right to be up there and try to help his teammates?
I don't know. I suppose John Hunter had good intentions going into that, but I certainly don't want to be a part of the debrief at KBM with Smith and Nemechek going in. Probably already happened this afternoon, but yeah, Chandler Smith. When he has something to be upset about, you should probably get out of the way. But yeah, John Hunter Nemechek. Yeah, and you can always look at it in hindsight. Maybe he should have dropped to the back. But I think he was trying the best with what was happening and the split-second decisions you have to make there at the closing laps. Yeah,
well, I think there is something to be said for helping your teammate. It is a little unorthodox when you're lap down or two to be in that position still at the lead of the pack. But, somebody in KBM equipment is certainly going to have a fast truck. But it was interesting. I've got to think he's a smart guy, that maybe was in his mind, trying to make sure somebody from the company wins the race. But does it need to be the guy that I'm directly competing against for a championship, or should we give it to the part-timer? It's interesting to think about what might have been going through his mind there.
Yeah, and this might prove negatively for Chandler Smith down the line of the season. If John Hunter is upset by this, well, oh, you don't want my help? Well, maybe I won't help you as much. And then that's where KBM will have to double down and go, no, wait a minute, no, you're teammates.
Yeah, especially if Chandler Smith misses a cut line by 1 point or two.
They'll look back and see. Yeah,
you can certainly look back there. But staying on Nemechek here for a second, like I mentioned, some dreadful luck to start the year. He has 3 stage wins, but his finishes are 24th, 25th, and 24th through the first 3 races. But get this, we're in an era of stage racing. Like I mentioned, 3 stage wins. All the stage points he's accumulated, he is still 8th in the point standings, despite the fact that his best finish of the year so far is 24th. So, Brandon, to get your perspective on this, you look at Nemechek's points position, what does that say about the point system in the stage racing and playoffs era? And is this a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Are you indifferent? Because we know Nemechek's going to, inevitably turn his luck around at some point. He's a championship contender. What are your thoughts on the whole situation?
Maybe in other situations I'd be indifferent. I mean, I'd have a bit bigger opinion about it, but I'm kind of indifferent with this situation in particular. I lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry.
That's all right. Nemechek and being in the top 10 in points with finishes outside the top 20. What does that say about the point system? And should somebody who's ever finished that low be that high in the points at this stage of the season?
Yeah, I think it shows. I think it shows that you can finish better in the middle of the race and still fall to the back at the end, and you can still have a reasonable spot in the point standings with this playoff format. And I know you don't like that, and I'm not a big fan of it either. But at this point in the season, I'm sort of indifferent about it because we know that John Hunter is going to find a way to get into victory lane before the playoffs begin anyway. At least that's what we would assume.
Yeah, I mean, I got to admit, I don't really like the optics of it. I think that he's ahead of points of some drivers that he shouldn't be based on the finishing results. And I don't know if NASCAR maybe needs to look at weighting the stages differently to prevent something like that from happening. But in the case of John Hunter Nemechek, like we said, stage racing is one thing, but the playoffs are another. And in this era where you so much as win a race, you're in the playoffs, assuming you can get to a certain threshold in the point standings, which we know, like we said, he's 8th in points right now, so he's already there. Got to think it's only a matter of time before he wins a race, and this all becomes pretty much irrelevant anyway. But it is interesting to look at his average finish this year compared to where he is in points, and you really see just how valuable the stage points can be, depending on what situation you're in here. So you want to talk about some rough luck for Nemechek. It's also been a rough start to the year for Hailie Deegan, and she has no stage points to fall back on at the moment, and it only got worse on Saturday after contact in the opening laps led to a cut tire. Deegan was forced to return to the pits as smoke was pouring from the left rear of her truck and eventually from the cockpit. It was a bit of a scary situation for her, and fortunately she was treated and released from the infield care center. But when the dust all settled, she leaves 33rd in driver points, and crucially, her number 1 truck team is 34th in owner points. So Brandon, it's kind of crazy that we're talking about this here, but we have 39 trucks on the entry list Dakota for 36 spots. We're at the point now after 3 races where we're on this year's point standings when it comes to provisionals and everything, and 34th in owner points. You got to think she doesn't really have that to fall back on. So should Hailie Deegan be worried about needing to make sure she hits her marks in qualifying and so much as makes the race when it comes to this week in Dakota?
Well, I'm not too familiar with DGR's single truck speed on the road courses, but yeah, Hailie Deegan, I mean, if you're not too familiar, this is her first Circuit of the Americas appearance, right?
She was full-time last year, so
she has okay. So number 2, but yeah, might be some reason to worry. And what I'm concerned of, do you think she might even pay someone if she cannot make the field, if she would pay to take a spot? Because I mean, she's such a high ticket driver for the Truck Series event.
I mean, that is something that you would have to consider. And, I know there's been talk of teams in the past, swapping owner points with each other and things like that. She's sponsored by Monster Energy. I got to think they have the budget if they wanted to do a ride buying situation or swap out, a lower funded team and renumber the truck or whatever. That certainly would be possible. We saw it when a colleague had their brake problems at Daytona in 2020, and they bought one of the RSS racing cars. Jeff Green gave up his seat for Ross Chastain so that he could run the race. So it would be a possibility. I'm hoping it doesn't come to that, and I don't think it will. I think DGR would certainly, you would hope, have the speed to give her a truck capable of making the field on time. I will note that not a DGR truck exactly, but like we were talking a few weeks ago, the Front Row Motorsports trucks, of course, very closely aligned. Ty Gilliland drove that truck to the win last year at COTA, so they certainly have the speed to get the job done. It'll be interesting to see. It like I said, it's kind of crazy that we're talking about somebody who's so high profile in this situation, but when you look at this position she's in owner's points, it's certainly not a guarantee that she'll be on the grid.
Well, hopefully she'll have the speed for it, but it's my hope that if she happens to not make the field, that she will take the high road and not pay for a spot. I think people will respect her a lot more if that decision is made.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the whole ride buying thing, and I think it's important to remember, because this came up when Chastain and Colleague did it in 2020. The rule for the playoffs is you only have to attempt to qualify for every race and be running full time. It's not that you have to start every race. So if Deegan were to somehow fail to qualify, she would still be playoff eligible when it comes to that. So you don't have to worry about that when it comes to deciding, do we want to do a ride buying situation here? Again, hopefully it doesn't come to that. I think she'll have the speed to make the race, but she certainly can't go around and just run the lap and not think much of it. She has to be on the wheel and make sure that she puts down a good lap, and hopefully she will. And this won't be a relevant talking point anymore, and she can get back up there in the point standings to a more comfortable situation. But it is going to be interesting to see what happens.
It might be easy to slip up on a qualifying lap at COTA. I think it's a terrible place for a stock car, which makes it fun for us, but terrible for all the drivers. So, I mean, one little slip that can knock you out of qualifying. So definitely not out of consideration.
And it's a long lap too. I was kind of surprised that they decided to use the full circuit, unlike what we see at, Watkins Glen, where they cut the boot out, and, Sonoma experimenting with going back to the carousel, the last couple of years. I think, Circuit of the Americas has some shorter courses that maybe would have worked a little bit better, but they're going with a full circuit. So it'll be interesting to see.
The club circuit or the international circuit.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
that's a big chunk of it.
Yeah. Yep. So let's get into the Xfinity Series here. And we talked about Sammy Smith winning again. Not much of a surprise in his Toyota. Ty Gibbs doing the same thing in his Toyota as well. His sixth career win in 23 starts. He held off Austin Hill to take his second win of the season. The only lap he led all day was the final one. So, Brandon, we're really running out of things to say when it comes to Ty Gibbs. So, this brings up an interesting talking point that I just thought of. Gibbs went straight from ARCA to Xfinity, which didn't used to be that uncommon. But like we've talked about on the show, it seems like, trucks used to be this place for veterans. And in some ways it still is. But a lot of teams are using it as a development, or a stage on the development ladder, rather, for their young drivers. So is Ty Gibbs proving that you can still go straight from ARCA to Xfinity and jump in the car and have some success?
Yeah, I think so. But you got to have the money, man. You got to have the money. That's the key. You got to have the great funding to have the Xfinity ride to go straight from ARCA to Xfinity. But yeah, this comes up to what we talked about before about the truck series. Before 95, there wasn't a stepping stone between ARCA and Xfinity. So that was the way that things went. And I think also as well that the truck series has kind of lost its identity over the years, and where it was once a place to more of a have fun environment, and also a place for veterans to sail off, right off into the sunset, if you will. It's now become a legitimate grind place, tertiary series for drivers to move their fight to the top. And I didn't have to do that. So, I mean, it's perfectly plausible for any other driver to skip that step on the dev ladder as long as they've got the cash. I've lost your mic.
Thank you. I apologize. Ty certainly has that with his sponsors, and obviously the family connection. Again, that's something we talked about before. No fault of his own, but it does give him kind of a foot in the door, and he's made the most of the opportunity that's been given to him, and all credit where it's due, because it has been a very incredible start to his young career. Now, Ty Gibbs, the guy he passed, was somebody in the complete opposite situation, somebody who's had to nickel and dime his way to every opportunity in his career and sign a bunch of associate sponsors to get there. Ryan Sieg looked like he finally might have a shot at that first career win, was leading on the white flag lap, but lost his momentum in the draft as Ty Gibbs passed him, faded all the way back to 10th on the last lap. But we look at how he's been running. He's come so close so many times. Is this finally the year that Ryan Sieg breaks through and goes to victory lane?
From an onlooker perspective, I certainly hope so. I think I was really happy whenever Ryan Sieg Racing changed over to the Ford Mustang because I'm a big supporter of having a good parity of manufacturers in the top 3 series. And Xfinity has been lacking in recent years since the departure of Roush Fenway from having Ford Mustangs in the field for the most part. It's basically a Chevy Toyota splitting the entire grid. And so it was nice for Ryan Sieg to switch to Ford, and perhaps that might be helping him a little bit in the past couple of years. I hope he goes to victory lane. That'd be a nice surprise this 2022 season.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point as well, because Penske just withdrew their effort with Austin Cindric moving up to the Cup Series. So, we have that alliance that they have actually with Stuart Haas and their 98 car. But it really has become dominated by Chevrolet and Toyota. We talk a lot on the Grid Live wrap-up show about Toyota's disadvantage in the Cup Series, especially on super speedways, with only having 6 cars, 4 from Gibbs and 2 from 2311. But Ford's really at a disadvantage in the Xfinity Series, so it would be nice to see Ryan Sieg's team maybe take advantage of that, get some more funding and an alliance with Stuart Haas and with Ford Performance, and try to make the most of it there.
Be great. Another stepping stone for Ford drivers needs to come from Ryan Sieg.
Yeah, that would be great to see. Now, last week we talked about Noah Gragson and Justin Allgaier, their strong starts for the year. They were 2 of 3 drivers that had a 100% top 10 rate. Gragson was actually riding a streak of consecutive top 3 finishes. First time that anybody's done that since Kevin Harvick way back when. Allgaier had yet to finish outside the top 10 as well, but both junior motorsports drivers got caught up in a 12-car accident, which left Gragson 26th and Allgaier out of the race entirely in 34th. So there's one man standing with this 100% top 10 rate. His name's AJ Allmendinger. We're going to a road course at Coda. Does he keep that streak going, Brandon?
Man, I've already gave you my pick a couple of times. AJ Allmendinger is going to win Circuit of the Americas. And I think I've said it so much at this point. I think if he doesn't win, I need to do something like embarrassing on this show. Maybe, nothing vulgar, but y'all can think of something in the comments. What should I do if AJ Allmendinger doesn't win? Is this all right, Joe? Can we do this?
Well, I got to tell you, I think it's a pretty easy question. You got to put money down. He's certainly going to be up there in the top 10 unless, he gets caught up in a wreck or something breaks on the car or something goes wrong. He is certainly a solid pick. If you had to do a pick a winner, I know we don't do grid pick a winner for the series we cover here on this show, but anytime you go to a road course, obviously AJ Allmendinger is going to be a threat. So I would be shocked if that top 10 streak comes to an end at Circuit of the Americas. And like you, I certainly think if you got to make a race prediction, certainly somebody that's got to be up there with who you think might be able to win the race. Now, one final question here before we close out the show and go into our one shining moment in closing here. You brought it up a couple times already. Very divided opinions on the racing we saw, generally speaking, at Atlanta this weekend. Of course, you weren't on the wrap-up show yesterday. Just give us your thoughts very quickly here. Did you like what you saw? Did you not like what you saw? And, do you miss the old Atlanta? Do you think that this is something that NASCAR should try to replicate? What are your thoughts on the whole situation?
I wish I had an M&M's hat and some sunglasses, because my response is just about as long as Kyle Busch should be. Nope. Yep. I as much as I dislike Kyle Busch growing up as a kid, I fully agree with his sentiments about this new Atlanta. I think it's a Frankenstein of a track. They took something beautiful away from Hampton, Georgia, and hopefully it'll the surface will get old again, and maybe we can see some lift. Maybe they'll change their mind. I mean, it might be too late to change their mind. And I commend them for trying something new, but I don't like the style of racing we saw this weekend. Not at all. And I think I need to apologize for last week as well while I'm at it, though. I did say I thought it might be dangerous, and there was no danger really to be seen. I had forgotten that they had extended out the tri-oval significantly, and so that I did not take that into account, and so I apologize for that. But,
yeah, well, I still think the yellow line, like you mentioned, I think it's a counterintuitive rule that I don't think should be in place.
There's actually a red and blue line.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know what I mean. That was the other thing. They put the rule in place, but they didn't paint the line yellow, so that was kind of interesting.
And when we come back, it'll be a green line for Quaker State.
That's man, I got to tell you, not a fan of that rule either. But I would tend to agree with you. My colleagues gave it 7 out of 10, I think, for the most part yesterday. I gave it a 4. I just had to be honest and was not particularly a fan of it myself. And it wasn't even that I didn't like the racing that we saw. I'm not a fan of super speedway racing in general, but what you mentioned about them taking a beloved track in Atlanta and doing away with it and making something completely different out of it.
Yeah.
That's more what bothers me about it.
I want to know who was dissing old Atlanta. I mean, yeah, the surface needed some attention and some TLC, but no one was complaining. I don't see anybody complaining about the banking. Like there was no reason to mess up something that brought success, and people loved Hotlanta, and now we have something different.
Yeah, I mean, if you had to reconfigure it, why not go back to what we had in the 90s that gave us that epic 1992 title fight? I don't think it needed a reconfiguration, but if you had to reconfigure it, I would have taken that in a heartbeat over, this mini Daytona or mini Talladega that we saw.
I believe that would cost a lot more because you would have to reconfigure the grandstands as well, going back to that original configuration. But I think the main point of it is, yeah, it was fun to watch, but I think this removed the motorsport part of what we love here, and it turned it all into entertainment.
Yeah, that's true. But you look at how many tracks have gotten multi-million-dollar facelifts and configurations over the years. I don't think it would have been outside the realm of possibility. But at the same time, I think I don't know. I wasn't particularly a fan, and I think it was honestly the racing that some people were hoping to get with the 550 package. I said that on yesterday's show as well. So I hope that NASCAR doesn't take a look at this and decide now every time it comes time to repave a mile and a half, we do the same thing here, try to create the same racing. I hope we stay away from that.
Dangerous ground, my friend. I hope they don't do it.
And even the people that liked it, I think what you saw from some of them was it goes back to the birthday cake analogy that you used earlier in the show here. If you like your cake, it's special because you only have it every so often. When you try to, replicate it every single week, it no longer becomes a special. And
well, actually, on this subject with birthday cake, I actually saw that comparison from either Doug Rice or Dave Moody. So I'll give the credit to one of them where it's due.
Yeah. I think Moody brought that up as well. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Of course, we're coming back to Atlanta later this year, so we'll see if we see something similar here in the summertime when it's a little bit more warm temperature wise. But
yeah, I'm not looking forward to it, but I'm still optimistic.
Yeah, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. All right, one shining moment time, real quick here as we come up on almost an hour and 20 minutes here. We had a lot to cover this weekend, but
we put on a feature film.
Yeah, we have here. I'm glad we had Josh from the show to help as well with
absolutely
stuff. What's your one shining moment this weekend?
Oh man, the whole weekend. This weekend, I can't really choose from the lower series. I'm gonna have to go to the top if you don't mind. My two shining moments would be the photo finish at Texas with Joseph Newgarden over his teammate, and then the Formula 1-1-2 Ferrari finish. Those were the two biggest things of the whole weekend for me, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think the finish to the IndyCar race was phenomenal. I said my one shining moment was Jimmy Johnson yesterday as well. It's great to see him having some success over there.
Yeah, sixth.
One shining moment is kind of hard to pick out of everything that we had this weekend, but I'm going to give it to Corey Heim. It's great to see him have some success so early in his truck career, and it's interesting to look at. Toyota seems very good at developing young drivers, but then we just talked about how many Cup seats they have. There's not necessarily a place for all of them to go. So Corey Heim, it certainly looks like he's another one that is in the Toyota family, is doing very, very well to start out his young career. So it'll be interesting to see how his career develops and where he goes going forward. But he's certainly off to a great start with his Truck Series win this weekend and all the success he's already had in ARCA as well. So that is going to do it for another episode here of Grid Live Encore. Make sure you like and subscribe to the Grid Network here on YouTube. Follow us on all of our social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, every single one of them. Also take time to invest in the Grid Network, help keep us on the air throughout 2022. Take 5 minutes after our show, join Colin, Mark, and Deschelle in investing in our Patreon. And of course, a special thank you to them. As always, if you'd rather make a one-time donation, you can buy me a coffee. You can buy a coffee for your favorite on-air talent, whether it's me, Brandon, Josh, or anybody else. And of course, a thank you to Ed, Amber, and Zachary, who have already done so. Any amount will help us continue to grow our motorsports media outlet here. Visit public.com, our sponsor of the stock market social media home. The referral code GRIDnet will give you $5 to invest in the stock market. Public.com allows you to connect with your friends, make new friends, and use tools to invest in the stock market. Now, Wednesday, as always, we'll have Grid Tonight with Adam and Kobe. They will be discussing the return of the Adelaide 500 in supercars. Thursday, Joe and Daniel host Women in Motorsports. And as always, we'll have Grid Live pre-race on Saturday, Grid Live wrap-up on Sunday, and Grid Live Encore here on Monday night. Another busy week. We've got trucks and Xfinity at COTA. ARCA West makes their return. They'll be at Irwindale. And no Formula 3 this weekend, but Formula 2 will join F1 in Saudi Arabia. Brandon, what are you looking forward to the most?
Probably Saudi Arabia, I'd say. I'm really getting into this F1 season this year, and also the F2 joining them as well.
Yeah. It's I got to admit, I'm fairly new to Formula 2 as well. I was a little surprised to see them have back-to-back race weekends this early in the year, but it'll certainly be interesting to continue to follow all of that action right here on Grid Live Encore and all of our Grid Network programming. So for Joshua Burch and Brandon Crosslin, I'm Ben Schneider. Thanks as always for watching, and have a wonderful week.
Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform, public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities, such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest. Start investing and networking on public.com.